Single billionaire finds a mother with little twin girls, abandoned by her husband on a lonely road, not knowing they would become his daily miracle. The kitchen clock had been stuck at 3:15 for 2 years. Nathan Cross couldn't care less. Time, for him, had become just an abstract concept that other people followed. At Hillcrest Farm, the days dragged on without distinction, like grey clouds that never brought rain. That autumn morning, Nathan woke up as always, with no hurry and no purpose. At 45, his body no longer responded like before. A persistent ache on the right side of his abdomen reminded him of the yellow envelope kept in the kitchen drawer, the one with the medical results he refused to discuss. His unshaven beard was over 2 weeks old. His brown hair, now streaked with grey, fell over tired eyes. Nathan hadn't looked in a mirror for months, not out of lost vanity, but because he couldn't bear to see what he had become, a shadow of the man he once was. Hillcrest Farm, one of the largest properties in the region, was withering just like its owner. The 2-story main house, built of fine lumber and stone, was a relic of better times. The Cross family fortune, built over generations in the lumber business, still filled bank accounts Nathan rarely accessed. His only luxury was not having to worry about money, but even that no longer seemed to matter. Stacks of dusty objects filled the corners of the house. Rare books nobody read, valuable paintings hidden under sheets, a grand piano in the corner of the living room, covered in dust, plenty of money in the bank, plenty of loneliness in the walls, and too much silence in the halls. She would hate to see it all like this, he thought, drinking bitter coffee straight from the kettle. His ex-wife had left 3 years ago, tired of fighting alone against the wall Nathan had built around himself after the diagnosis. Outside, the wind blew strong, shaking the dry branches of the old oak tree. Nathan put on his worn-out coat, the same one for years, though he could afford hundreds, and his battered hat. He took his rifle, more out of habit than necessity, and went out to check the north fence. Not because he cared about trespassers, but because he needed a reason to put one foot in front of the other. The 200-acre property seemed larger every year. When he inherited it from his father more than 15 years ago, he had grand plans. Thoroughbred horses, modern crops, business expansions, maybe even children running through the fields. Now all that remained were memories that hurt like open wounds. The diagnosis came as a sentence: liver cancer, discovered by chance in a routine exam. Early stage treatable, the doctors assured him. But something inside Nathan broke that day. As if, somehow, his body had betrayed the only thing he had ever trusted, his own strength. He reached the north fence. 3 posts were loose, giving in to the weight of time and neglect. Nathan looked at the tools in his pickup truck and then at the horizon. Maybe tomorrow, tomorrow. A word he used as a shield. Tomorrow he would fix the fence. Tomorrow he would answer the lawyer's letters about the finalized divorce. Tomorrow he would call the doctor. Tomorrow he would look at the offers to buy the farm that arrived regularly. But his tomorrows piled up like dust in the corners of the empty mansion. His top-of-the-line cell phone, which he hardly ever used, rang in his coat pocket. Nathan ignored it. Probably his bank manager wanting to discuss investments, or a distant cousin with yet another pitch to sell the farm. He wasn't interested in the money. He had more than he could ever spend. He just wanted to be left alone. The sky began to darken earlier than usual. A storm was approaching from the west. Nathan watched the heavy clouds, feeling the first drops of rain on his face. He didn't move. The cold water soaked through the worn fabric of his coat, but he stayed still, as though testing whether he could still feel anything. A distant rumble of thunder finally drove him back to the pickup. The old Ford F-150, its blue paint faded, groaned as he turned the key. He could have any imported car, but he preferred this one of the few things he still cared about. It was the only sound besides the radio breaking the farm's silence. Nathan kept it tuned to a news station, not because he was interested in the outside world, but because the unfamiliar voices created the illusion that he wasn't completely alone. Driving back along the dirt road that cut across the property, Nathan noticed something unusual in his rear-view mirror. A figure, no, 3 figures, walking through the downpour that now fell heavily. He slowed down, more by reflex than curiosity. In the midst of that bleak landscape, a young woman held the hands of two small children, all of them drenched, struggling through the mud that sucked at their shoes with every step. A rolling suitcase, obviously too heavy for that terrain, was being dragged with difficulty. Nathan almost kept going. Almost something. Perhaps the last strand of humanity left in his hollow chest made him stop the truck and look again in the rearview mirror. The girls were far too small for such a trek, identical, with light hair and yellow raincoats. With an annoyed sigh, more for himself than for the world, Nathan reversed until he reached them. He rolled the window down just enough for his voice to rise above the pounding rain. "Are you lost?" The woman, younger than he initially thought, looked up. Her green eyes were weary, but there was still something resolute in them. Determination, perhaps. "My husband abandoned us on the road. We're a long way from home." Her face paled, but she quickly composed herself. "I see. We'll just keep walking then." The girls looked at Nathan with a mixture of curiosity and fear. They were absolutely identical, except for a small detail he noticed even through the rain. One had a blue ribbon in her soaked hair, the other a pink one. "Where are you going?" Nathan asked, against his better judgment. The woman hesitated. "Wherever the road takes us," she finally replied, with a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. It was a painfully honest answer, one that said everything without really saying anything. Nathan recognized that look. It was the same one he used to see in the mirror before he stopped looking, the look of someone who had lost their way. "Get in," he said, not thinking too much. "I can drive you into town tomorrow morning." The woman narrowed her eyes, suspicious. "We don't need charity. It's not charity, it's a storm. And these kids are soaked." As if to confirm his words, a lightning bolt ripped across the sky, followed by a deafening thunderclap. The girls pressed themselves against their mother. "I'm Rachel," she said finally, still hesitant. "These are Tessa and Nora." Nathan just gave a slight nod. "Nathan Cross. My farm is about a mile or so from here." After a moment that felt like an eternity, Rachel agreed. "Just until the rain stops," she said, more to herself than to him, as she helped the girls climb into the back of the cab. The drive back to the farm took place in silence, broken only by the squeak of the windshield wipers and the occasional whisper from Rachel comforting her daughters. Nathan drove slowly, wary of the potholes in the dirt road that was now turning into a mud pit. When they finally arrived, the main gate lights hadn't worked for months. The long driveway, flanked by old oak trees, looked like the path to an abandoned castle. The main house emerged in the darkness, imposing, silent, its windows dark like empty eyes. Nathan parked as close as possible to the covered porch to minimize the distance through the rain. Even so, they got even wetter as they rushed to the door. When he finally switched on the hall lights, Rachel and the girls were momentarily speechless. The high ceiling with its faded murals, the dusty crystal chandelier, the curved staircase leading to the second floor. Antique, valuable furniture covered with sheets, boxes piled in random corners, books stacked on the floor. A wealthy man's home that had given up on luxury, yet had no energy to rid itself of it. "The bathroom's at the end of the hall," he said, not looking directly at Rachel. "There are clean towels in the closet. I'll light the wood stove." Rachel murmured a thank you and took the girls to the bathroom. Nathan heard the door close and took a deep breath. What the hell was he doing? He hadn't had visitors in years. He no longer knew how to behave around other people, much less children. With mechanical motions, he lit the old cast-iron wood stove he rarely used. His ex-wife had always loved that antique piece, saying it gave the house a soul. Nathan had a top-of-the-line central heating system installed, but it hadn't worked for months. Nobody came to fix it because he never returned their calls. Slowly, warmth began to spread throughout the room. Nathan opened a cupboard and found old but clean blankets. He placed them on the ancient leather sofa and headed to the kitchen. The pantry was nearly empty, aside from basics. Coffee, some canned goods, a few potatoes. A man who could afford feasts lived like a hermit. When Rachel and the girls returned from the bathroom, they seemed different. They were still in the same clothes, now less soaked, but their faces had a bit of color. The twins, despite obvious fatigue, looked around with wide eyes, absorbing the mansion's faded grandeur. "This house is really big," said one of them, the one wearing the pink ribbon. "It looks like a castle," added the other, with the blue ribbon. Rachel gently scolded them. "Girls, that's not polite." Nathan shrugged. "They're right. It's too big for just one person. And too old for someone who doesn't take care of it." An awkward silence settled, broken only by the crackling of the wood in the stove. Nathan indicated the blankets on the sofa. "You can stay here tonight. Tomorrow morning I can take you into town." Rachel nodded, but a shadow crossed her eyes. "Thank you. Just for tonight." The girls were already exploring the living room, touching objects with excessive care, as if afraid of breaking something. Their eyes landed on a dusty photo on the shelf. "Who's that pretty lady?" asked Tessa, pointing to the picture. Nathan felt his stomach drop. "No one important," he replied, more sharply than he intended. Immediately regretting it, he added, "Someone who used to live here." Rachel sensed the tension and called the girls. "Come on, girls, let's get warm by the stove." The twins obeyed, wrapping themselves in blankets far too large for their small frames. Nathan realized he didn't know their ages. "They're 5's," Rachel answered when he asked, almost as if she read his thoughts. "They had their birthday last month." Nathan just nodded. 5-year-olds. He couldn't remember the last time he spoke to a child. "I have some soup," he finally said, breaking the silence. "It's not much, but it's hot." Rachel accepted the offer with a tired smile. When Nathan brought over the bowls, fine porcelain covered in dust he'd quickly wiped off, he saw how her hands trembled slightly as she held the soup. Exhaustion, probably, or something else. The girls ate eagerly, blowing on the hot soup with exaggerated little puffs that created bubbles on the surface. Rachel watched them with a look Nathan recognized, the look of someone who carries the world on their shoulders and can't afford to falter. "What happened to you?" The question slipped out before Nathan could stop it. Rachel raised her eyes, surprised by his directness. For a moment, it seemed she wouldn't answer. Then, with a sigh, she set her bowl on the mahogany coffee table. Life happened. Bad decisions. Worse people. She glanced at her daughters, ensuring they were too distracted by the soup to pay attention. Sometimes you have to start over from scratch. Nathan didn't pry further. He knew that feeling all too well. After the impromptu meal, exhaustion finally overcame the twins. Their little eyes could barely stay open as Rachel settled them on the large sofa, side by side, under the blankets. Nathan watched the mother whisper something in her daughter's ears, a lullaby, perhaps, or a promise that everything would be all right. He retreated to the kitchen, feeling like an intruder in his own home. When Rachel joined him minutes later, the silence returned, heavy as the storm raging outside. "We have nowhere to go," she said finally, gazing out the kitchen window that revealed nothing but darkness and rain. "Not yet. I need a few days just for tonight," Nathan interrupted, echoing her earlier words. "That's what we agreed." Rachel nodded, resigned. "Right. We'll leave tomorrow. Thank you for your kindness." Kindness. The word sounded strange to Nathan's ears. He didn't see himself as a kind man, not anymore. "There's a guest room upstairs," he said, avoiding her eyes. "We'll be fine on the sofa," she replied. Nathan shrugged. "Suit yourself." When he finally withdrew to his own bedroom at the end of the west wing, Nathan sat on the edge of the old bed and looked out the window. The rain kept pounding. The wind shook the tree branches like dancing skeletons in the darkness. "Just for tonight," he murmured to himself, repeating her words again. But something within him, a nearly forgotten voice, whispered in response, life had other plans. 3 weeks had passed since just for tonight. 3 weeks Nathan barely noticed slipping through his fingers, like the fine sand in the stream behind the property. Something was changing at Hillcrest Farm, slowly and gently, like the passing of seasons. On that Saturday morning, Nathan got up later than usual. The sun was already high when he finally went downstairs, drawn by a smell he didn't immediately recognize, something sweet, something homey. He stopped in the hallway, startled by what he saw. The living room, once covered in dust and disarray, looked unrecognizable. The sheets covering the furniture were gone. Stacks of old newspapers had been organized in a box in the corner. The hardwood floor gleamed with a forgotten shine. The windows, now free of heavy curtains, let in beams of light that danced across the polished surface. Rachel was in the kitchen, her back to him, cooking something on the stove. She hadn't noticed him. Nathan stood there, taking in the changes. The dining table, unused for years, was set with the stored china. There were flowers in a vase, wild daisies that grew near the barn. That's when he heard laughter. It was coming from outside. He walked to the kitchen window and saw the twins in the backyard. Tessa and Nora, now he could tell them apart without the ribbons, were running around the old oak tree, chasing Bolt, the dog that had appeared on the property 2 days ago, a skinny mutt that Nathan grudgingly allowed to stay after the girl's endless pleading. "Good morning," Rachel said, finally noticing his presence. "I hope you don't mind. I thought we could—" She hesitated, suddenly unsure. Her green eyes searched his reaction, cautious. Over the past few weeks, she'd learned to read Nathan's slightest expressions. His lips pressed tight when something annoyed him, the slight furrow in his brow when he wanted to be alone. "The house needed to breathe," she finished, lowering her gaze to the batter she was mixing in a large bowl. Nathan looked around again. He should be angry. He should feel invaded. It was his house, his possessions, his dusty memories he preferred to keep untouched. But what he felt, surprisingly, was closer to gratitude. "It's different," was all he could manage. "I can put everything back the way it was," Rachel offered quickly, still unsure. "The girls needed space to play and—" "No," he interrupted. "It's fine." Rachel smiled for the first time that morning, a genuine smile that lit up her tired face. Nathan noticed she looked younger when she smiled, lighter. "I'm making pancakes," she said, indicating the bowl. "Using some fruit I found at the bottom of the freezer. Hopefully they're still good." Nathan nodded, unsure what to say. He couldn't recall the last time he ate something that didn't come out of a can or a box, or the last time anyone cooked for him. Outside, the twins squealed with delight every time the dog ran in circles, barking joyfully. The scene was as strange as the house's new brightness, a welcome intrusion of life into a place that had long forgotten it. "Can I use the barn?" Rachel asked, interrupting his thoughts. "For a project with the girls. They need something to do, and there's so much old stuff there we could—" "Use whatever you need," Nathan replied, not thinking twice. The barn. How long had it been since he last went in there? Years, perhaps. The place where he had stored everything he didn't want to see but couldn't throw away. His father's tools, his ex-wife's boxes, abandoned dreams in various shapes. "Thank you," Rachel said, returning her attention to the pancakes. "Coffee's ready if you want some." Nathan picked up a clean mug, cleaner than he remembered them being, and poured some coffee. The first sip surprised him. It wasn't the bitter, strong coffee he was used to. It tasted different, better. "I added a bit of cinnamon," Rachel explained, noticing his expression. "My grandmother always made it this way." Before he could respond, the back door slammed and the twins burst in like a small whirlwind, followed by the panting dog. Mr. Nathan, Mr. Nathan. Tessa, the more talkative of the two, dashed over to him, stopping inches away. "We found a huge frog near the pond, this big." She stretched her arms as wide as she could. "It wasn't that big," Nora corrected, more contained but just as excited. "But it jumped really far when we tried to catch it." "Girls, what did I say about running in like that?" Rachel scolded them gently. "And about bringing the dog inside." "Sorry, Mommy," they replied in unison, with rehearsed expressions of regret that only lasted a few seconds. "Mr. Nathan," Tessa continued, as though she hadn't been interrupted. "Can you show us where the frogs are? Bolt wants to hunt them." "Bolt's not hunting anything," Rachel intervened, giving her daughter a stern look. "And you two need to wash those dirty hands before breakfast." The girls looked at their muddy hands and then at Nathan, as if checking whether he had noticed. He almost smiled at their guilty expressions. "The creek," Nathan said, surprising everyone, including himself. "If you go where the creek bends, past the 3 big rocks, there's a shallow spot where frogs hang out in the summer. The twins' eyes lit up at this precious information, as though he had just revealed the location of buried treasure. "Can we go there after breakfast, Mummy?" Nora asked, already knowing the answer. "We'll see," Rachel replied in that tone mothers everywhere master, the one that's neither yes nor no, but keeps hope alive. The twins ran to the bathroom to wash their hands, with Bolt trotting behind, leaving a trail of muddy paw prints that Rachel eyed with resignation. "They never give me a minute's rest," she commented, but there was affection in her voice. "They're like little tornadoes." Nathan noticed the muddy footprints on the freshly cleaned floor. Under other circumstances, it would have annoyed him. Now, strangely, it felt right, as though the house was finally serving a purpose beyond housing his painful memories. "I can clean that up," he offered, pointing to the dirty floor. Rachel looked surprised. "No need. I'm used to their mess." They sat down to breakfast, Nathan, Rachel, and the twins, in a setup vaguely resembling a family. The pancakes were delicious, as was the homemade syrup Rachel had made from the fruit. The girls chatted non-stop, alternating stories about the frog, theories about where Bolt might have lived before finding them, and grand plans to convert the barn into a secret club. Nathan ate in silence, but for the first time in years, it wasn't a silence of isolation. It was almost comfortable being there, listening to the cheerful chatter of small voices and Rachel's occasional comments, trying to keep order in the chaos. "Mr. Nathan, does your belly hurt?" Nora asked suddenly, with the brutal innocence of children. Silence fell over the table. Rachel went pale. "Nora, that's not polite," she scolded, but her voice trembled slightly. Nathan set down his fork, feeling the familiar weight of reality return. Of course she had noticed. Kids always notice. In recent days, the pain on his right side had worsened, making him hunch a bit when he walked. "Something isn't working right," he responded simply, surprising himself with his honesty. "Have you seen a doctor?" Rachel asked, concern evident in her eyes. "Sorry, it's none of my business." "I did," Nathan replied, keeping his eyes on his plate. "A long time ago." Silence returned, heavier this time. The twins looked from one adult to the other, sensing the tension but not fully understanding it. "When I get a boo-boo, Mummy kisses it and it gets better," Tessa offered with the simple logic of her 5 years. It was Rachel who broke the uncomfortable moment, changing the subject. "Girls, how about you help me gather some eggs from the chickens? I think Mr. Nathan needs to rest a bit." With the typical energy of small children, the twins instantly forgot the serious conversation and leapt from their chairs, excited for a new adventure. Bolt, who'd been lying under the table waiting for crumbs, got up to follow them. "Stay away from the rooster," Nathan warned, recalling the temperamental bird. The hens lay their eggs in the small shed next to the coop. Rachel nodded, grateful for the warning, and ushered the girls outside. When the door closed, Nathan released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. How could a single question from a child bring up everything he'd been trying to ignore? He got up to pour another cup of coffee, watching through the window as Rachel and the twins walked to the shed. The girls hopped from stone to stone on the path, making the short walk an adventure. Rachel followed with the infinite patience only mothers seem to have, carrying a small basket for the eggs. With the house silent once more, Nathan expected to feel relief. That's what he always wanted: silence, solitude, the comfort of not having to interact. But to his surprise, the house felt strangely empty without the children's noise. Instead of retreating to his office as he did every morning, Nathan found himself walking through the house, noticing the small changes Rachel had made. The heavy curtains in the living room now tied back to let in light. The books that had been piled on the floor, arranged on shelves. The photographs, some of them, that were back in frames instead of being empty or hidden away. He stopped in front of one in particular, a younger man, clean-shaven and bright-eyed, smiling next to a bay horse. It took him a few seconds to realize it was himself. How he had changed, how he had allowed himself to disappear inside his own skin. He continued walking, finally reaching the office door, his usual refuge. His hand paused on the doorknob, and in a sudden decision, he turned away, heading to the back of the house instead. The late morning sun was bright now, warming the crisp spring air. Nathan walked through the garden, following the sound of the girls' laughter coming from the small shed. He stopped at a distance, just watching. Rachel was kneeling, helping the twins carefully collect the eggs. Nora held the basket, serious in her responsibility. Tessa chattered non-stop, likely inventing some fantastical tale about the hens. Bolt trotted in circles around them, keeping a respectful distance from the birds. It was such a simple scene, ordinary. Nothing extraordinary, yet something about it touched Nathan in a way he couldn't explain. There was beauty in the simplicity of that moment, in how Rachel smiled at her daughters, in Nora's intense focus as she held an egg with both hands, in Tessa's carefree laughter watching a chicken run. Nathan felt something stir in his chest. Not the familiar pain in his right side, but something different, a tightening that wasn't uncomfortable, a warmth that had nothing to do with the morning sun. When Rachel looked up and saw him standing there, she seemed momentarily worried. Had they done something wrong? Were they bothering him? But then, to her surprise, Nathan did something unexpected. He walked over to them. "Need any help?" he asked, his voice rough from lack of use. "Mr. Nathan, look at all these eggs," Tessa exclaimed, proudly showing off the basket like she was presenting a treasure. "They're real," she added, as if that were the most astonishing part. "Where did you think eggs came from?" Nathan asked with mild amusement. "The grocery store," Nora responded with utmost seriousness, making Rachel smile. "We never lived in the countryside before," Rachel explained, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "This is all new to them." Nathan nodded, understanding. "The hens lay almost every day," he said, kneeling to the twins' level. "If you come early enough, you can even find the eggs still warm." The twins' eyes grew wide at that tidbit, as though it were the most extraordinary thing they'd ever heard. "Can we come again tomorrow?" Tessa asked, her small face full of hope. Nathan looked at Rachel, who seemed equally curious about his answer. "Sure," he said simply. The rest of the morning unfolded in ways Nathan hadn't foreseen. Instead of retreating to his office, he found himself showing the girls the path to the creek. He didn't join in the exploration, but preferred to sit under the shade of an old willow while Rachel and the twins investigated the shallow banks. The girls squealed with excitement each time they spotted a frog or a tiny fish. Bolt ran back and forth, occasionally splashing in the water to cool off. Rachel kept a watchful eye on her daughters, but her face looked more relaxed than Nathan had ever seen it. "They've never had so much space to run around," she remarked, sitting beside him for a moment. "In our apartment, it was hard." Nathan nodded, understanding more than she realized. The feeling of being confined, of walls closing in. Not the same as her situation, of course. Their prisons were different. But he understood. "You can use the property," he said, surprising himself with his generosity. "Plenty of safe places for them to play?" Rachel looked at him, her green eyes full of gratitude that made him uncomfortable. He didn't feel he deserved that look. He wasn't doing anything special. It was just empty land, a big house for one man. Why not let others enjoy it? "Thank you," she said simply, seeming to understand his discomfort. "It means a lot to us." When they returned to the house, it was nearly lunchtime. The twins were tired, but in a good way, the kind of tired that comes from running outside, exploring, fully living in the moment. Rachel prepared a simple lunch with what she found in the kitchen. It was surprising how she managed to make the same ingredients Nathan used taste so much better. The girls ate with enthusiasm, still buzzing about the morning's adventures. "Tomorrow can we check out the barn?" Tessa asked between bites. "If Mr. Nathan allows," Rachel replied, glancing questioningly at him. Nathan shrugged, which everyone had come to interpret as a yes. "We're going to build a secret club," Nora explained seriously. "Only people who know the password can come in." "And what's the password?" Nathan asked, unexpectedly joining the conversation. The twins looked at each other, clearly not having thought that far ahead. "Abracadabra?" Tessa suggested. "Too easy," Nora objected. "Everybody knows it." "What about hopping frogs?" Rachel suggested, smiling at them. "No, Tess, it has to be something only we know," Nora insisted, frowning as she concentrated. "Hillcrest," Nathan said suddenly. The three of them stared at him, surprised. It's the name of the farm, he explained. Not many people know it. Hillcrest, Tessa repeated, trying the word. That sounds pretty. Hill means a small mountain and crest is the top, Nathan explained. The farm was built on the highest point in the area. So it's like a castle on a hill, Tessa exclaimed, enchanted by the idea. Something like that, Nathan agreed, almost smiling. Lunch ended, and the girls, exhausted from the morning's excitement, were led by Rachel for a nap. Nathan used the quiet time to finally head to his office. He sat in his worn leather chair, trying to resume his old routine. But something had changed. The sounds of the house were different now. Even in the girls' naptime silence, there was a presence that hadn't existed before. The occasional creak of a floorboard when Rachel moved upstairs, Bolt's soft snoring in the hallway, the faint clink of dishes being put away somewhere in the distance. Nathan realized, with a mixture of surprise and resignation, that he could no longer sink into silence the way he used to. The house, which for so long had been just empty space around him, now seemed to be breathing again with the gentle rhythm of everyday life. And to his own surprise, he didn't mind. In fact, a part of him, a part he thought had died long ago, seemed to be waking up, slowly, carefully, like someone testing a muscle that had not been used in years. As the afternoon sun shone through the office window, casting patterned shadows on the hardwood floor, Nathan Cross realized that something fundamental had changed. Not just in the house. In him, life had found a way back in, without asking permission. And against all expectations, he was letting it in. The razor slid smoothly over the foam-covered skin, revealing a face Nathan barely recognized. It had been so long. The grayish beard, grown uncontrollably for months, now fell in clumps into the porcelain sink. Each sweep of the blade exposed forgotten features. The strong jawline, the tiny scar near his left ear, a souvenir of a teenage horseback accident. The lines around his eyes now deeper, marks of an unkind passage of time. Nathan paused, examining the stranger in the mirror. Part of him, the part that had given up so long ago, wanted to stop right there, leave the job half done. After all, what difference did it make? But his hands kept going, methodical, precise, as though they had a will of their own. The hot water rinsed away the last traces of foam. Nathan ran his hand over his newly shaven face, the sensation almost alien after so long. It wasn't vanity that drove him. It was something deeper, more essential, a need to recognize himself again. When he finally left the bathroom, the morning sun was high. From downstairs came the now familiar sounds, the twins' laughter, Rachel's gentle voice, the occasional bark from Bolt. Those sounds, once intrusive, now formed a soundscape that somehow made the house feel more solid, more real. "Mr. Nathan!" Tessa exclaimed as he walked down the stairs. Her eyes widened in surprise. "Your face disappeared." "It didn't disappear, silly," Nora corrected her, though she looked equally impressed. "He just shaved his beard." Rachel, who was setting the breakfast table, stopped what she was doing. Her gaze met Nathan's for a moment, surprise, approval, and something else he couldn't name. "Good morning," she said simply, but there was a smile in her voice. After breakfast, Nathan did not retire to the office as usual. Instead, he headed to the tool shed. The door squeaked as it opened, another reminder of how he had neglected the place. Dust and cobwebs covered the shelves. Rusted tools were scattered without order. Empty buckets lay overturned in the corner. He began slowly, without overthinking it. First, a broom to clear the dirt floor, then a damp cloth over surfaces. The tools, one by one, received attention, oil on hinges, sanding the blades, applying wax to wooden handles. Nathan lost track of time, hours perhaps. The sun shifted, casting different shadows through the open shed door. His hands worked patiently, rediscovering movements long forgotten. The wrench that belonged to his father shone again, the metal reflecting the sunlight. The saws, lined up by size, looked ready for use. The old blowtorch, now cleaned, waited patiently for the next job. Nathan sensed a presence. Turning, he found Rachel standing at the door, watching him. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, "The girls are asking if they can help you, Mr. Nathan." Before he could respond, the twins appeared behind their mother, eyes shining with curiosity. "What are you doing?" Tessa asked, always straightforward. "Organizing tools," Nathan answered, surprised at the natural ease in his own voice. "What for?" Nora wanted to know, as practical as ever. Nathan thought for a moment. "To fix the north fence," he finally said. After lunch, Nathan loaded the pickup with the necessary tools. The twins watched in fascination as he selected nails, a hammer, wire, and a pair of worn leather gloves. "Can we go?" Tessa asked, nearly bouncing with excitement. Nathan looked at Rachel, who was watching from the porch. "If your mom says it's okay," he replied, surprising himself. "Please, Mommy," the twins begged in unison, with that perfect synchronization only twins seem to master. Rachel hesitated, then nodded. "Be careful with the tools," she warned, but there was a smile on her lips. The north fence was at the far edge of the property, where Nathan's land met a dense forest. The truck ride was short, but enough for the twins, seated in the back, to come up with a flurry of theories about what lived in the woods. "Unicorns," Tessa insisted with unwavering conviction. "There are no unicorns," Nora countered. "Probably deer." "How do you know?" "Have you ever seen a unicorn?" "No, because they don't exist." "Mr. Nathan, do unicorns live in the woods?" Nathan almost smiled. "I've never seen any," he replied seriously, "but I have seen deer, foxes, and even a bear once." "A real bear." Both voices sounded in perfect harmony, blending fear and fascination. When they arrived at the broken fence, the work began immediately. The posts needed to be straightened, wires retightened, and loose boards nailed back into place. Nathan worked with a calm efficiency, his hands rediscovering dormant skills. The twins, to his surprise, were enthusiastic, attentive helpers. Tessa held the nails. Nora handed over tools when asked. Both watched with reverent attention every move of Nathan's large, calloused hands. "Why is the fence so important?" Nora asked at one point. Nathan paused, thinking about the answer. "It marks where our land ends," he said at last. "It protects what's ours. Our land." The words slipped out before he realized it. "Not my land. Ours." "What's on the other side?" Tessa wanted to know, peering through the wires into the forest beyond. "Other lives," Nathan said, surprising himself with the philosophical response. "Animals, trees, a world different from ours." The work went on until mid-afternoon. The hot summer sun made Nathan sweat, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was honest sweat from labor, something his body remembered well, even after so much inactivity. When they finally finished, the fence stood firm again. Nathan surveyed his handiwork, feeling a simple satisfaction he hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't perfect, but it was sturdy, useful, done with purpose. The twins celebrated as though they'd conquered a mountain. Tessa clapped while Nora critically inspected the results, nodding in approval. On the drive back, Nathan steered in silence, listening to the girls' excited chatter from the back seat. They talked about all the other fences they could fix, about how they'd help Mr. Nathan with more projects, about being the best helpers in the world. The dirt road wound through the property, revealing glimpses of the main house in the distance. Nathan saw it as if for the first time, the imposing structure against the blue sky, the now clean windows reflecting the sunlight, the thin smoke drifting from the kitchen chimney where Rachel was likely preparing an afternoon snack. Something strange stirred inside Nathan's chest, a tightening not of pain but of recognition. This was his home, his life. For so long, he'd simply existed in it, like a ghost in his own space. Now somehow he was coming back to truly inhabit it. When he parked near the porch, Rachel came out to greet them. Her smile broadened as she saw the twins hopping out of the pickup, each trying to be first to tell about the fence adventure. "Mr. Nathan fixed everything. I held the nails. He said he once saw a bear. I helped with the hammer." Rachel laughed at their excitement, then locked eyes with Nathan. For a moment, something unspoken passed between them, a mutual acknowledgement, a shared understanding. "Thanks for taking them," she said simply. Nathan just nodded, climbing down from the truck with the tools. He felt tired, but in a good way. the kind of tired that comes from purposeful work, not mere existence. While he put the tools away, now clean and organized in their rightful places, Nathan realized something had shifted. Not just around him, the cleaner house, the tended garden, the repaired fence, but inside him. Shaving that morning hadn't been just about hygiene. Cleaning objects wasn't merely about organization. Fixing the fence wasn't just a practical necessity. They were small steps. A man slowly returning to the life he had abandoned. And most surprising of all, he wanted to take the next step. Rachel noticed before Nathan did that something was wrong. The signs were there, subtle as whispers, but growing harder to ignore. The way he rested his hand on his right side after lifting something heavy. The frequent pauses while working in the barn, when he thought no one was watching. The occasional cold sweat on his forehead during mild mornings. The nights she heard him pacing the hallway, unable to sleep. In recent days, since he'd been working more around the farm, the signs had worsened. Rachel observed him through the kitchen window while he fixed the swing for the girls. Every movement brought a flicker of pain across his face. Yet he kept going, as stubborn as ever. She knew what it was, recognition. She had been trained to notice signs and read people, first as the daughter of an alcoholic father, always anticipating his moods, then as a nurse in a field hospital during a humanitarian mission in Africa. Finally, as the wife of a man whose clenched fists always signaled danger, Rachel spoke the language of hidden suffering, and Nathan, no matter how he tried to hide it, was an open book to her trained eyes. That afternoon, while making dinner, she saw through the window that Nathan was sitting on the porch, staring at the horizon. The girls were playing in the yard with Bolt, their laughter echoing across the property. Nathan watched them with an expression Rachel couldn't fully decipher, part affection, part sadness, as though gazing at something beyond his reach. Wiping her hands on her apron, Rachel made a decision she'd postponed too long. Walking out to the porch, she noticed how Nathan sat up straighter when he saw her, trying to appear less tired. Always hiding, always pretending to be strong. "I brought iced tea," she said, offering him a glass. It was a warm summer afternoon, the kind that makes the air shimmer over distant fields. "Thanks," he replied, taking the drink. Rachel sat in the chair beside him. For a few minutes, they stayed in silence, simply watching the girls play in the yard. Bolt chased a butterfly, jumping comically, making the twins laugh uncontrollably. "They love it here," Rachel commented, her eyes fixed on her daughters. "I've never seen them so happy." Nathan nodded, sipping his tea. "Kids need space." "And safety," she added softly. "They need to know they're protected." Something in her voice made Nathan turn to look at her. There was an unspoken question in those words, a story she didn't share, but it hung between them like a distant storm cloud. "You can stay as long as you need," he said, interpreting her concern. "No one's going to bother you here." Rachel smiled, grateful for the offer, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. There was more on her mind. "Nathan," she began, choosing her words carefully, "I've been watching you." He stiffened slightly, his fingers tightening around the glass. "How long have you been sick?" she asked directly. The question hung between them, heavy like the air before a storm. For a moment, Rachel thought he would get up and walk away, as he usually did whenever conversation got too personal. But Nathan stayed seated, his eyes on the girls in the distance. "How did you know?" he finally asked, his voice lower than usual. "I'm a nurse," she replied, "or was before the twins. I worked in hospitals for years. I recognize the signs." Nathan looked at her, surprised by this revelation. In almost 2 months living under the same roof, there was much they still didn't know about each other. 3 years, he said at last, "a tumor in my liver. They found it by accident during a routine exam." Rachel nodded, taking in the information. "What stage?" "Early, when they first found it. Now?" He shrugged, a gesture that spoke volumes. "Have you done any treatment?" Nathan's silence answered for him. "Why?" she asked, no accusation in her voice, just genuine curiosity. Nathan took a deep breath, eyes still on the twins, who now sat in the grass making flower crowns. It was easier to talk while looking at them instead of Rachel. "My father died of cancer when I was 17, he began. 6 months of chemotherapy. He lost his hair, he lost weight, he lost his dignity. In the end, he didn't even recognize my mum. Rachel listened quietly, letting him have the space to continue. When the doctor said cancer, it was like someone flipped a switch inside me. Something shut down. Nathan took another sip of tea, his hand trembling slightly. All I could think about was my dad in the hospital, the tubes, the smell. I decided I wouldn't go through that. And your wife? A sad smile appeared briefly. She fought. She scheduled appointments I wouldn't go to, researched treatments, begged doctors to come see me at home. For 2 years, she tried everything. Until one day, she gave up, Rachel finished softly. I don't blame her, Nathan said, voice low. Who would want to stay with someone who'd already given up on himself? The sun was starting to set, painting the sky in orange hues. Shadows stretched across the lawn, and the air was cooling. Tessa ran after Bolt while Nora studied a line of ants on the ground. How is it now? Rachel asked. The pain, I mean. Nathan considered lying, as he often did to himself, but there was something in Rachel's eyes, a mix of understanding and resolve, that made lying impossible. Worse, he admitted, especially at night and after I do too much work. Have you seen a doctor recently? He shook his head. Not since she left. Rachel absorbed that in silence. Her gaze returned to the girls, who were now slowly walking back toward the porch, probably tired or hungry. Children notice things, you know, she said quietly. They ask me why you sometimes look sad, even when you smile. Nathan looked at her, surprised. I smile. A small smile curved Rachel's lips. More than you think, especially around them. The twins approached, their voices chattering about who had made the prettier flower crown. Bolt trotted behind, tongue lolling after an afternoon of playing. What are you going to do, Nathan? Rachel asked, her voice almost a whisper. It was a question he had avoided for 3 years. A question his ex-wife had asked countless times, with anger, with tears, with pleas. But from Rachel, it sounded different. There was no judgment, just genuine curiosity about his intentions. I don't know, he answered honestly. I didn't think I'd live this long, to be honest. Rachel looked at him, her green eyes piercing. But now? Nathan watched the twins approach, excited voices discussing their flower creations. He looked at Bolt, who had turned from a skinny stray into a happy, healthy dog. He looked at the farm, slowly coming back to life under caring hands that weren't his own. Now I'm not sure, he admitted. The girls reached the porch, Tessa leading as always, holding a half-finished daisy crown. Mr. Nathan, I made this for you, she announced, offering her creation. Before he could respond, she placed the crown on his head. The awkward arrangement was crooked, and a few petals fell onto his shoulder, but Tessa looked incredibly proud of her work. Now you're the king of the farm, she declared, with the unshakable logic of a 5-year-old. Nora stepped up, more timid, and offered her own piece, not a crown, but a small bouquet tied with a piece of grass. To put in your room, she explained solemnly. So it looks pretty. Nathan accepted the gifts, unsure how to react. The girls watched him expectantly. Rachel stood by with a gentle smile on her lips. Thank you, he finally said, his voice rough. Satisfied with his answer, the twins ran inside, announcing they were hungry and asking what was for dinner. Bolt followed, as loyal as ever. Rachel and Nathan stayed on the porch, now bathed in the golden light of sunset. The silence returned, but it was different. Not a silence of unspoken pain, but one of possibilities. I think you have a decision to make, Rachel said at last, standing up. But it doesn't have to be today. She gathered the empty tea glasses, preparing to go back inside. Before entering, however, she turned to look at Nathan, still wearing the crooked daisy crown. Are you sick, Nathan? She asked, formally voicing the question that had hovered between them from the start. Nathan looked at her, seeing not just the woman who cooked in his kitchen and cleaned his house, but the nurse who recognized symptoms, the mother who protected her daughters, the person who, in some inexplicable way, cared about his well-being. Cancer, he confirmed, still finding it hard to say out loud. My wife tried. I refused everything. She gave up, and I let her. Rachel nodded, showing no surprise, just acceptance. Then she stepped closer and did something nobody had done in years. She placed her hand over his, a warm, gentle, present touch. "If you want," she said, her eyes meeting his, "we can stay. Take care of this together." The offer hung between them like a fragile soap bubble, delicate and unexpected. Nathan looked at her hand on his, feeling the warmth emanating from that simple contact. "Why?" he asked, genuinely puzzled. "You barely know me." Rachel smiled, a smile that carried stories he did not yet know, pains she had not shared. "Sometimes," she answered softly, "the most broken people are the ones who best know how to fix others." She withdrew her hand and went inside, leaving Nathan alone with his crooked flower crown, the setting sun, and a choice he had never imagined he would face again. The waiting room at Simpson Memorial Hospital was a study in pale blue and grey, colors chosen by some interior designer who believed in their soothing power. Nathan doubted any color could soothe someone in that place. Seated in the uncomfortable plastic chair, he tried not to look at the other patients. Some were clearly in advanced stages of treatment, wearing colorful scarves over bald heads. Others, like him, still appeared normal, if there was anything normal about being there. Mr. Cross, the nurse at the door, held a clipboard. She wore a kind but professional smile, the kind that promised nothing more than competence. Nathan stood up, feeling the familiar knot in his stomach. It wasn't exactly fear, more like resistance, as if every cell in his body protested. "We shouldn't be here. Do you want me to go in with you?" Rachel was seated beside him, flipping absent-mindedly through an outdated magazine. She didn't look at him as she asked, giving him the space to refuse without discomfort. "You can come," he replied, voice lower than usual. Together, they followed the nurse down the white corridor. The antiseptic smell brought back memories Nathan had tried to bury, his father in this very hospital, fading a little more with each visit. Doctors wearing carefully neutral expressions as they delivered bad news, wrapped in technical words. Dr. Harrison hadn't changed much in 3 years, maybe a few extra grey hairs at his temples. The same thin-framed glasses, the same look that blended compassion with clinical objectivity. "Nathan," he said, standing to greet him. His glance shifted briefly to Rachel, a silent question. "Rachel Sullivan," she introduced herself, offering a handshake. "I'm helping Nathan." The doctor nodded, not pressing for details. After decades treating cancer patients, he knew relationships could take unusual shapes around illness. Friends drifted away, strangers became close, family changed form. "Well, Nathan, it's been quite a while," the doctor commented, settling back into his chair. 3 years, to be exact. Nathan only nodded, uncomfortable at the reminder of how many appointments he'd missed, how many calls he never returned. "We'll need new tests, of course, to see where things stand now." The doctor spoke calmly, as though Nathan was just another patient who'd missed a routine follow-up, and not someone who'd completely abandoned treatment. "But if you're here, I assume you're ready to talk about options." "I am," Nathan answered simply. Rachel stayed quiet by his side, her presence tangible. She wasn't there to speak for him or push him into anything, just so he wouldn't face this alone. The following days were filled with tests, blood work, scans, MRIs. Nathan's body was invaded by needles, scanners, and machines that buzzed around him. For each procedure, Rachel was there, sometimes in the same room, sometimes in the waiting area, always present when he walked out. At home, the twins sensed something was happening. Nathan was quieter than usual, spending more time on the porch, staring into the distance. But unlike before, his look wasn't empty. It was contemplative, as if doing complicated calculations in his mind. On the morning he was to receive his results, Nathan found Tessa in the garden, picking wildflowers. "It's for you," she said, handing him a small yellow daisy. Before he could thank her, she took the flower back, opened the hat she'd left on the bench, and placed the daisy inside. "So it'll stay with you all the time," she explained, with the unwavering logic of a 5-year-old. When he put on the hat, Nathan felt the flower against his hair. A reminder that No matter what the doctor might say that afternoon, there were small, beautiful things in the world worth noticing. Dr. Harrison looked serious when they entered his office. Over the last 3 years, the tumor had grown more than expected. It was now at an intermediate stage, bordering advanced. Still treatable, but the prognosis was less optimistic than when first discovered. "We'll need to be aggressive," the doctor explained. "Chemotherapy. To start. Depending on how the tumor responds, we might consider surgery to remove part of it." Nathan listened in silence, the hat with the hidden daisy resting on his knee. Rachel occasionally asked practical questions about schedules, side effects, and success rates, the sort of information he needed but couldn't bring himself to request. "When do we start?" Nathan finally asked, his voice surprisingly steady. "Next week, if that's acceptable," the doctor said, clearly relieved that Nathan was accepting treatment so promptly. "I'll refer you to Dr. Chen, our specialist in liver oncology." They left the hospital in silence. In the parking lot, before getting in the car, Rachel gently touched Nathan's arm. "It's okay not to be okay with this," she said. Nathan nodded, grateful she didn't offer empty optimism or cliched lines about fighting and winning. "I'm not sure it'll work," he admitted. "After all this time, we don't know," Rachel agreed. "But now you're not in this alone." His first chemotherapy session came sooner than Nathan expected. The treatment center was a large room with recliner chairs arranged in semicircles. TVs mounted on the walls played muted cooking shows. Nurses moved efficiently between patients, checking IV bags hanging from metal stands. Nathan sat in the assigned chair, trying not to think of his father, once in this very spot. The nurse found a vein, inserted the needle, then connected it to the tube, carrying medication meant to kill the cancer cells, hopefully without destroying too many healthy ones along the way. Rachel sat in the adjacent chair, a book open on her lap, but seldom turning a page. Now and then, she offered water or asked if he was comfortable, simple questions requiring only a nod or a shake of the head. The first side effects appeared 2 days later. A wave of nausea woke him in the middle of the night, sending him rushing to the bathroom. A weakness made his legs feel like cotton, an odd skin sensitivity, as though even the softest fabric chafed. On the third morning after the treatment, Nathan could barely get out of bed. He felt defeated in a way he'd never experienced, even in his darkest days post-diagnosis. That's when he heard a soft knock at the door. Before he could respond, it creaked open a few inches, and Nora's head appeared in the gap. "Mr. Nathan," she whispered. "Can I come in?" He nodded, trying to sit a bit straighter against the pillows. Nora slipped quietly into the room, carrying something in her hands, a small pink blanket meant for dolls, embroidered with tiny sheep. "Mommy said you're not feeling well," she explained, coming closer with that solemn manner only she possessed. "I brought my magic blanket." Before Nathan could protest, the girl unfolded the small blanket and draped it across his chest and shoulders, arranging it carefully. "Now you're protected," she declared with total conviction. The simplicity of the gesture caught Nathan off guard. The blanket was ridiculously small for an adult man, hardly covering his shoulders. Yet the seriousness in Nora's eyes made it impossible not to accept her gift with equal gravity. "Thank you," he managed. Nora nodded, satisfied, then slipped out as quietly as she'd come. Nathan lay there, looking at the tiny sheep-embroidered blanket. It was absurd. And yet, there was something comforting in the idea that he was protected, not from cancer or chemotherapy, but from the crushing sense of facing it all alone. The chemotherapy sessions continued, once every 3 weeks. Each brought its own challenges, days when Nathan could barely get out of bed, days when the world seemed tinted with a strange, almost radioactive glow, days when his stomach rebelled at anything but dry toast and weak tea. On one particularly rough day, when even the thought of food made him nauseous, he lay on the living room couch, staring at the ceiling, feeling utterly useless. Rachel had gone to town to pick up more anti-nausea meds, leaving the twins with strict instructions to let Mr. Nathan rest. The two girls, however, had their own interpretation of what rest meant. "Mr. Nathan, wake up!" Tessa's voice pulled him from a half-sleep, half-daydream state. Opening his eyes, he found both girls kneeling on the floor beside the couch, their faces inches from his. "I'm not sleeping," he murmured. "You look sad," Nora observed, tilting her head, as if studying a puzzle. "Just tired," Nathan replied, attempting a reassuring smile. From their exchanged glance, he hadn't convinced them. "We invented something," Tessa announced, bouncing with excitement. "It's called an emergency smile." "A what?" Nathan asked, confused. "It's for when somebody needs to smile right away," Nora explained, with her usual serious logic. Before he could ask more, they began. First, Tessa puffed out her cheeks like a hamster, crossed her eyes, and wobbled her head. Nora, typically so solemn, pulled her ears outward, bared all her teeth in an exaggerated grin, and made a sound like a duck choking. Their antics were so unexpected, so earnestly silly in trying to cheer him up, that Nathan couldn't help himself. It started as a small grin, grew into a laugh, and quickly turned into a big guffaw that ended in a cough. Encouraged by their success, the girls amped up their ridiculous faces. Tessa pulled her nose upward while wiggling her eyebrows. Nora curled her bottom lip over her nose and rolled her eyes in opposite directions. When Rachel returned, she found the three of them on the couch, Nathan in the middle, a twin on each side, all making absurd faces and laughing until they were out of breath. That night, after the twins were asleep and the house was quiet, Nathan sat on the porch with Rachel. The full moon illuminated the fields, making the familiar landscape appear almost magical. "How do you do it?" he asked suddenly. "Do what?" Rachel replied, surprised by his question. "Take care of everyone. The girls, me, the house. You never seem overwhelmed." Rachel smiled slightly, gazing at the moon. "Who said I'm not?" Nathan frowned, realizing he'd never considered that possibility. "I learned a long time ago," she went on, "that life doesn't wait for you to be ready for challenges. They just show up, and you handle them one day at a time." They fell silent for a while, watching the fleeting shadows cast by passing clouds. "The girls adore you, you know," Rachel said softly. Nathan didn't reply immediately. Being adored was a strange concept, especially by two tiny people who'd only known him a few months. "I don't know why," he finally said. "I haven't done anything to deserve it." Rachel chuckled quietly. "Children don't love based on merit, Nathan. They just love." He considered this, feeling the weight and lightness of that truth. All his adult life, he'd operated under a logic of effort and reward, hard work and results, cause and effect. But Tessa's flowers in his hat, Nora's protective blanket, their silly emergency smile faces, none of it followed that logic. It was offered freely, without calculation or expectation. The moon continued its journey across the sky. The silence between them felt comfortable now, no longer burdened by unspoken words. "I think I'm going to stay," Nathan said at last, his voice almost a whisper. Rachel turned to look at him, a silent question in her eyes. "In this world," he clarified. "I'm going to try to stick around." She nodded, understanding everything he couldn't put into words. It was a commitment not just to treatment, but to life, to trying, to letting himself hope, if only to see Tessa and Nora grow another inch, to discover the next ridiculous emergency smile, to feel another summer's heat on Hillcrest Farm. "And we're here," Rachel said simply. "As long as you want to stay, you won't be alone." And somehow, under that bright full moon, that felt like enough. Autumn arrived at Hillcrest Farm with a gentleness that seemed almost reluctant. The leaves took their time changing color, as if summer refused to leave. Mornings grew chillier, but the afternoon still held the warmth of waning long days. Nathan was having a good day. His chemotherapy cycles had created a new rhythm in his life, bad days followed by better ones, until the next treatment restarted the cycle. Today was one of the better days, with nausea giving him a brief reprieve and some of his energy returning. Rachel had suggested they use it to organize what she politely called areas needing attention in the house. In reality, these were spaces Nathan had left untouched for years, collecting dust and memories in equal measure. "That guest room at the end of the hall is full of boxes," Rachel mentioned at breakfast. "The girls are growing up. They'll soon need their own space." It was a request disguised as a suggestion. In all the months they'd lived there, Rachel never made changes to the house's structure without asking him first. The twins still slept in the room next to hers, but it was getting cramped for 2 active children. "We can look through what's in there," Nathan agreed, surprising himself with his willingness. After breakfast, while the girls played in the yard under Bolt's watchful eye, he took his guard duties seriously. Nathan and Rachel went upstairs. The East Wing hallway, as Nathan called that part of the house, had remained mostly shut since his ex-wife left. The guest room was the last one on the right. The door creaked when Nathan opened it, a sound from something unused for too long. The air was stale, carrying that unmistakable scent of a place sealed off for years. The light spilling in revealed a medium-sized room with a single bed pushed against one wall. Stacks of cardboard boxes surrounded it, some labeled in Margaret's neat handwriting, others sealed with no indication of their contents. "Didn't realize there was so much stuff here," Nathan muttered, mostly to himself. "Want me to help? Or would you rather do this alone?" Rachel asked, sensitive to the possibility that he might need privacy. Nathan hesitated. He wasn't sure what he'd find in these boxes. Memories, likely, not just items but moments frozen from a former life that felt like it belonged to someone else. "You can help," he decided, "but if I get weird, don't take it personally." Rachel smiled in understanding. "I have 3 older brothers. I grew up being shooed away whenever they didn't want me around. I can handle weird." They started with the boxes nearest the door. Most contained mundane items, old books, seasonal decorations never reused, some winter clothes. They worked in companionable silence, Rachel setting aside anything potentially useful, Nathan occasionally recounting the story behind a particular object. "This belonged to my grandfather," he said, holding up a silver pocket watch. "It never worked in my time, but he carried it anyway." After an hour, they'd made steady progress. Empty boxes now formed a stack in the hallway. The room was beginning to look more spacious. Then Nathan reached a built-in closet on the wall opposite the window. The door was slightly warped, making it hard to open. "Might need a bit of force," he said, pulling the rusty knob. With a protesting screech, the door finally gave way, revealing dusty shelves. At the top were old shoeboxes. On the middle shelves, photo albums and folders. On the lower shelf, a carved wooden box Nathan recognized immediately. It was his father's wedding gift to him, a handmade box meant to store important things. As old Mr. Cross had explained, Nathan carefully lifted it, blowing off the dust. "It's beautiful," Rachel remarked, admiring the delicate oak leaf carvings on the lid. Nathan nodded, running his fingers over the familiar pattern. "My father made it. He had a knack for woodwork." He set the box on the bed and opened the lid. Inside, as expected, were important documents, a marriage certificate, now void, old insurance policies, deeds to properties sold long ago. He thumbed through them absently, not really reading, until his fingers found an envelope he didn't recall placing there. It was a simple white envelope, unaddressed and unstamped, just his name on the front, written in Margaret's unmistakable handwriting. Nathan felt a heavy sensation in his stomach that had nothing to do with chemotherapy. "I'll go check on the girls," Rachel said softly, sensing he'd found something personal. "I'll be back in a few minutes." He barely noticed her leave, the door gently clicking shut. The envelope felt as heavy as lead in his hands, though it was just paper, a letter from Margaret, one he'd never seen. With slightly trembling fingers, he opened the envelope. The paper inside was folded with precision, like everything Margaret did. She was always organized, methodical, the opposite of his more laid-back nature. Before the illness, anyway, he pulled out the letter and began to read. "Nathan, I spent 5 years trying to save a man who doesn't want saving. I scheduled your appointments, researched treatments, begged, shouted, cried. You chose to die while still alive. I can't breathe in this house anymore, where even the air seems to have given up. I hope someday you understand I'm not abandoning you. I'm saving myself. Just know that I loved you. Margaret." The words hit him like a physical blow. Not because of what they said, he'd known why she left, but because of the date at the top, 3 days before she actually walked out. She'd written this letter, placed it in a box he rarely opened, and waited, maybe hoping he would find it in time, that something would change. But he hadn't found it. Not until now, 3 years later, when his life had already collapsed and, astonishingly, begun to rebuild in ways he never could have imagined. "Just know that I loved you." That last line felt almost like a confession, something hard to admit after all the resentment, a glimpse of the Margaret he'd known before the illness created a chasm between them. Nathan felt something hot on his face, realizing with surprise that he was crying. He couldn't remember the last time he'd cried, maybe at his father's funeral so many years ago, or perhaps the day he received his diagnosis alone in the doctor's office, when the reality of his mortality finally pierced the fog of denial. The tears came silently, simply flowing like a dam giving way after too much pressure. They weren't just for Margaret or the lost marriage. They were for everything. The wasted time, the years living like a ghost in his own life, the man he once was and had allowed to slip away. The letter trembled in his hands. "You chose to die while still alive." Those harsh but true words echoed in his mind. That was exactly what he'd done. It wasn't the cancer that killed him. It was his decision to withdraw, to shut people out, to refuse any helping hand. Nathan closed his eyes, letting the tears continue unimpeded. There was something strangely freeing in this quiet weeping, as though he was finally letting himself grieve not just Margaret's departure, but everything he'd lost along the way. When the tears finally subsided, he carefully refolded the letter and slid it back into the envelope. Not with anger or bitterness, but with a new understanding. Margaret had done what she needed to survive. He couldn't blame her for that. The door opened quietly. Rachel stood there, her face a blend of concern and hesitation. "Are you all right?" she asked softly. Nathan raised his eyes, not bothering to hide the tear stains on his cheeks. "No," he answered honestly, "but I will be." Rachel nodded, understanding without demanding explanations. She approached and sat beside him on the bed, not touching him, just being there. "I found a letter," he said after a moment, "from Margaret, my ex-wife, written just before she left. Do you want to talk about it?" Nathan looked down at the envelope in his hands. "She said, 'I chose to die while still alive,' and she was right." The silence that followed held no discomfort, only respect. Rachel waited, letting him continue if he wished. "I refused treatment, pushed people away, shut myself in this house. I was dying long before the cancer got worse." Rachel placed her hand gently on his, a light touch almost imperceptible, yet comforting in its simplicity. "It's strange," Nathan said, staring out the window at the autumn sky. "I needed to read these words now, not before. I wouldn't have understood them then. Some truths only make sense when we're ready to hear them," Rachel observed. Nathan nodded, sensing the wisdom in her simple statement. He looked again at Margaret's neat handwriting on the envelope. She had tried, in her own way. She had loved him in her own way. "It took me so long to wake up," he said quietly. "I lost so much time." "But you're awake now," Rachel answered simply. "That's what matters." Outside, the twins' laughter floated through the air. Life went on, insistent as ever. New beginnings rose from the remains of the old. Carefully, Nathan placed the letter back into the wooden box. Not to forget it again, but to keep it in its rightful place, in the past. Acknowledged but no longer defining his present or future. "Shall we keep going?" he asked, indicating the rest of the room that still needed sorting. Rachel smiled, that gentle smile that had become part of Nathan's daily life, and nodded. Together, they returned to their task of clearing space, not just in that room, but in life, for whatever lay ahead. A cloud of dust heralded the visitors' arrival before the engine could be heard. Nathan was on the porch, enjoying a rare good day between chemo cycles. Across the yard, Rachel and the twins were picking tomatoes in the garden they'd planted in the summer. The car pulled up abruptly, tires skidding on loose dirt. A grey sedan, not a local vehicle. The door flew open, slammed shut with unnecessary force. A tall man with short dark hair stepped out, wearing jeans, a t-shirt, and a worn leather jacket. His shoulders were tense, his fists clenched as he advanced. Nathan glimpsed Rachel standing up in the garden, going rigid at the sight of the newcomer. In a swift move, she pulled the girls down, hiding them behind the plants. "Where is she?" the man shouted, striding up the driveway. "I know they're here." Nathan descended the porch steps slowly, feeling a curious calm settle over him. Bolt came charging around the side of the house, barking furiously at the perceived threat. "Can I help you?" Nathan asked, his voice steady. "Don't play dumb," the man snapped, bloodshot eyes scanning the property. The smell of alcohol clung to him. "I know Rachel's here, with my daughters." A chill ran down Nathan's spine. This was Kyle, Rachel's ex-husband, the man who'd abandoned them on the road months before. "I think you should leave," Nathan said, standing between Kyle and the garden. "Rachel!" Kyle bellowed, ignoring Nathan. "I know you're out there. Show yourself." "Bolt, quiet," Nathan commanded. The dog stopped barking but stayed alert, growling under his breath. "Look, I don't know who you are," Kyle snarled, eyeing Nathan from head to toe. "But that woman and those kids are my family. She has no right to keep them from me after what she did. I helped them." "You left them on the side of the road," Nathan answered, not budging an inch. Kyle's eyes narrowed, then widened again in a cruel smile. "That's the story she told you, huh?" "Made you into a fool. Where is she? Stop hiding." "You should get back in your car and leave," Nathan repeated. "Now." Kyle took a step closer, dangerously near. "You ruined my life," he growled. "Drove me away. Now you've got my family." Nathan realized the man was drunk. His eyes struggled to focus and his hands shook slightly. "I won't say it again," Nathan said quietly. "Leave." "They're mine," Kyle shouted, his face reddening. "My family. You're nothing. Some dying old man she found to replace her husband." For a moment, it seemed he would charge. Nathan braced himself, uncertain if he had the strength to fight but determined to protect Rachel and the girls. Then, as abruptly as he arrived, something shifted in Kyle's expression. He looked around as if realizing where he was and what he was doing. "This isn't over," he muttered, retreating to his car. "I'll be back. With the cops. With lawyers. I'm taking my daughters." Nathan stood unmoving until the car disappeared down the road, the dust cloud slowly settling. Only then did he turn toward the garden. Rachel emerged from her hiding place, the twins clinging to her. 3 pale faces, all grim. No tears, just a frightening calm that spoke more than crying ever could. Nathan noticed something unsettling: the silence. Tessa, normally so chatty, was completely mute. Nora, usually serious but never truly afraid, had wide, watchful eyes. They didn't run to Kyle. They didn't cry out for their father. They showed no sign of recognition or longing, only fear, silent, contained, clearly familiar to them. "You okay?" Nathan asked as they walked back to the porch. Rachel nodded briefly, guiding the girls inside. "Let's go in." In the living room, she sat the twins on the couch, kneeling in front of them. "It was just a scare," she said, her voice forcibly calm. "Everything's fine now. He's gone." "Is he coming back?" Nora whispered. "Don't worry about that right now," Rachel answered, tucking a strand of hair behind her daughter's ear. "We're safe here. I'll make some hot chocolate," Nathan offered, grasping for normalcy. Hours later, with the twins finally asleep, Rachel joined Nathan on the porch. The night sky glittered with stars, and the chilly air hinted at the coming winter. "I'm sorry about all that," she said into the silence. "I don't know how he found us." "Was he always like that?" Nathan asked. Rachel inhaled deeply, her eyes on the stars. "He was always aggressive," she said slowly, as though each word cost her. "But he hid it well. Charming in public, controlling at home." She ran a hand through her hair, a nervous gesture Nathan rarely saw. "After he lost his job, he lost control. He drank more. One day, after a fight, he took us for a drive. Drove for hours. Drinking." Her voice shook. "When I said I wanted to go home with the girls, he stopped in the middle of nowhere, threw our bags out, and left us there." Nathan felt anger coiling inside but stayed silent. I thought he was just trying to scare us, that he'd come back. We waited, then it started raining. Rachel swallowed hard. That's when I realized it was our chance to finally get away. We started walking, and then you showed up. Nathan remembered that rainy night, the three figures trudging along the muddy road, how one coincidence had changed all their lives. He was always aggressive. After he lost his job, he lost control. Rachel turned to him, determination flashing in her eyes. We lived in fear. Now, we have peace. We're not going back to that. He won't take you away, Nathan said simply, as if making a vow. Rachel squeezed his hand gently, thanking him without words. They sat side by side in the darkness, sharing not just the present they were building, but also the shadows of their pasts. Shadows that, however dark, could no longer eclipse the light they'd found together. 2 days after Kyle's visit, a quiet tension still lingered over Hillcrest Farm. The twins played closer to the house, their eyes occasionally darting toward the driveway. Rachel checked the window often, trying to hide her vigilance. Even Bolt, once laid back, now patrolled the perimeter like a watchful guard. Their hard-won peace had been shaken. Nathan saw these changes with growing concern. During the silent hours of the night, when sleep eluded him, a more frequent occurrence as treatment progressed, an idea formed in his mind. It wasn't sudden, but rather like a gradual sunrise, something that had always been there, waiting for acknowledgement. On the third morning, while the twins drew pictures at the kitchen table, he found Rachel hanging laundry on the backyard line. The autumn sun created a golden halo around her hair, turning the ordinary chore into something almost sacred. "There's something I want to show you," he said, approaching her. "Will the girls be okay with Bolt for a while?" Rachel agreed, curious but trusting. In the months they'd lived here, she had learned that beneath Nathan's quiet nature lay a reassuring solidity. They walked together behind the main property, following a little-used path that led past the main barn. The trail cut through a small grove of ancient oak trees, their only companions the occasional bird call and the rustle of leaves underfoot. "Is everything all right?" Rachel asked, breaking the silence. "Yes," he replied, slowing his pace so they walked side by side. "I've been thinking about the future." The trail curved gently, opening into a small sunlit clearing. There, partially hidden among the trees, stood a cottage, smaller than the main house, sadder but charming. 2 stories of stone and dark wood, with a wrap-around porch. Rachel stopped in surprise. "What is this place?" "The caretaker's house," Nathan explained, climbing the porch steps that creaked beneath his weight. "When my grandfather ran the farm as a business, there was always a caretaker living here." From his pocket, Nathan pulled out a set of old keys and unlocked the door. Dust motes danced in the sunbeams filtering through faded curtains. Inside was surprisingly spacious, a living room with a stone fireplace, the hallway leading to other rooms, and a wooden staircase going up. "It's been empty for years," Nathan said as Rachel walked around slowly, running her fingers over a carved doorframe. "The last caretaker left when my father scaled down operations. Since then, I've only come here to check the roof, but never really used it." Rachel pulled aside one of the curtains, revealing a spectacular view of the valley beyond, with towering trees providing generous shade, and in the distance, hazy mountains outlining the region. "It's beautiful," she said quietly. "But why are you showing me this now?" Nathan inhaled, gathering his thoughts. He was more accustomed to keeping words inside than offering them up, but this was too important. After what happened with Kyle, I got to thinking about safety, about you and the girls here. He paused, choosing each word with care. "Maybe you need a place that's truly yours, not borrowed, not temporary." Rachel stopped exploring, turning to face him with eyes that began to grasp his meaning. "Nathan, are you suggesting—" "It's been empty for years," he continued, glancing around the living room. "Like me. Now, it could be yours." Rachel stood still, her green eyes wide. It wasn't just a house, it was permanence and security, a future she could shape on her own terms. "We can't accept this," she protested, voice trembling. "It's too much, Nathan." "It's not a gift," he replied. "It's acknowledgement. That you belong here as much as I do. Maybe more, given how you've brought this place back to life. Rachel walked to the kitchen window, gazing into a yard where Anne, with a little imagination, she could see the twins running around in the spring, a garden in bloom, maybe even a swing hanging from one of those old trees. It'll need work, Nathan added. Fresh paint, a few bathroom repairs, maybe a kitchen update. It's perfect, Rachel interrupted, turning around with tears in her eyes and a smile lighting up her face. Absolutely perfect. She came closer, gently touching his arm. You haven't just given us shelter, she said, voice trembling with emotion. You've given us a place. A chance to belong. Nathan nodded, unable to respond in words. Something in Rachel's gratitude disarmed him completely, as though he was the benefactor here, when in fact he felt he was the one gaining the most. They spent the next hour exploring the house, making plans. Upstairs there were 3 bedrooms, 1 master and 2 smaller, just right for the twins. The bathroom needed remodeling, but the structure was solid. The house had central heating, though the system likely needed an inspection after so many idle years. The girls will love it, Rachel said, excitement in her voice like that of a child. Especially Tessa. She's always drawing pictures of houses with gardens. We can show them today, Nathan suggested, locking up when they stepped back outside. The smile Rachel gave him was all the answer he needed. When they returned, they found the twins building a fort from sheets and chairs. Bolt dozed lazily beneath the makeshift tent, only his tail sticking out at the entrance. Where were you? Tessa asked, popping her head out of the fort, her hair a tangled mess. We're building a castle. Exploring, Rachel answered, glancing mischievously at Nathan. We have a surprise to show you, after lunch. The next few hours were filled with eager chatter from the twins, trying to pry clues from their mother. Nathan observed the scene, Rachel cooking lunch, effortlessly deflecting the girls' questions. Nora drawing her best guess of the mystery, Tessa dancing around in excitement, Bolt wagging his tail at the center of it all, his house, his life, a reality he could never have imagined 6 months ago. After lunch, the short walk to the caretaker's house was met with shouts of delight. The twins rushed from room to room, racing up and down the stairs, claiming spaces, imagining out loud how they decorate every corner. This will be my room, Tessa announced, barreling into one of the upstairs bedrooms. No, mine, Nora argued, right behind her. You can share like you do now, Rachel suggested, mediating gently. What about when we're big? Tessa asked, earnest. Nathan couldn't help but smile. When we're big. A casual assumption of continued time, of a future, a notion that warmed something inside him. We'll figure that out when you're older, Rachel replied. Meanwhile, we've got a lot to do before this place is move-in ready. Can we paint it purple? Asked Tessa, already planning. Maybe a very light purple, Rachel compromised, sharing an amused look with Nathan. Can we build a swing in that tree? Nora asked, pointing through the window at an old oak. Sure, Nathan replied. We can build it together. It was like a floodgate had opened. Suddenly everyone was talking at once. Rachel about curtains and furniture, Tessa about colors and decorations, Nora about books and art corners. Nathan watched them, amazed at the transformation. The fear Kyle's visit had cast was being replaced with hope. They spent the afternoon in the little house, measuring spaces, discussing colors, making plans. The tension of the last few days melted away, replaced by anticipation of a new beginning. How long until we can move in? Tessa asked as they headed back to the main house at sunset. We need to do some renovations first, Rachel explained, but maybe in a few weeks. Will Mr. Nathan visit us? Nora asked abruptly, her voice small and serious. A brief silence fell. It was a question that revealed a deep worry, the fear of distance or loss that Nora, so observant, had picked up. You won't be far, Nathan reassured softly. It's just on the other side of the property. We can see each other every day. Will we still have breakfast together? Tessa persisted. And lunch and dinner anytime you want, he promised. The big house will always be open for you. That seemed to placate them, and they resumed chattering about the new place. When they arrived, the twins were tired but glowing with excitement. Rachel took them for baths while Nathan put the kettle on for tea. The simple ritual, boiling water, choosing herbs, preparing cups, felt comforting in its ordinariness. Later, after the twins had gone to bed, a process that took longer than usual, with extra stories and more questions about the new house, Rachel joined Nathan in the kitchen. "Thank you," she said simply, accepting the cup of tea he handed her, not just for the house but for everything. Nathan nodded, aware that words wouldn't suffice. They shared a comfortable silence for a while, each absorbed in their own thoughts. "I'll check on the girls before I turn in," Rachel said eventually. "Good night, Nathan." "Good night, Rachel." She paused in the doorway as though wanting to say more, but merely smiled, a smile full of unspoken promises, and headed upstairs, leaving Nathan alone. He stayed in the kitchen, his own tea forgotten. Through the window, he watched the stars begin to emerge in the darkening sky. Life had quieted again, returning to the gentle rhythm of farm nights. In the silence, his thoughts roamed. He recalled the twins' laughter exploring the house, the light in Rachel's eyes as she made plans, the smell of the bread she'd baked that morning. He thought of Margaret's letter, at last understood and accepted. He reflected on the man he'd been, isolated, embittered, slowly fading, and the man he was becoming, someone who offered more than just a roof, who, even while sick, chose life. "Life is still worth it," he murmured to himself, watching the stars, slowly, quietly, but worth it. And the truth of those words resonated with a certainty he hadn't felt in years. He didn't know how much time he had left. The doctors were cautiously optimistic, but cancer was unpredictable. What he did know, with a clarity he'd lacked before, was that he wanted every day he could get. He wanted to see the twins grow, help Rachel plant that garden, feel the sun on his back while working the land. He wanted to keep living. The next morning, a peculiar calm enveloped Hillcrest Farm, the kind of stillness that comes from presence, not absence. The sky was a deep blue, cloudless. The crisp air smelled of damp earth and the last autumn flowers. Nathan sat on the porch, taking in the view. Rachel was kneeling beside a side flower bed, planting small lavender bushes. Her hands moved with practiced gentleness, tucking the roots into the soil, covering them with care. The twins played on the lawn with Bolt. Tessa, as usual, had invented an elaborate game with ever-changing rules. Nora participated with earnest seriousness, occasionally correcting her sister when she forgot her own rules. Nathan ran a hand over his recently shaved face, marveling at how much lighter he felt today. Maybe it was the sun on his shoulders, maybe the scene unfolding before him, maybe the acceptance of his place in this unexpected world. Tessa's laughter rang out as Bolt tried to catch a ball. She dashed over to Nathan, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "Mr. Nathan, did you see how high Bolt jumped?" she asked, clinging to his chair. "I sure did," he replied, smiling. "He's getting good at it." Tessa lingered, studying him with the frank curiosity only children have. Then, as if reaching some grand conclusion, she declared, "It's nice to be here." The simplicity of that statement touched something deep inside Nathan. It was exactly that, a sense that despite everything, despite the illness, the ghosts of the past, the uncertainties of the future, this was a good place to be. "This is where I learned to stay," he answered, surprised at the truth he discovered in his own words. Tessa grinned, satisfied, and ran back to Nora and the dog, resuming their interrupted game. Rachel stood up, brushing dirt off her hands. Her eyes met Nathan's across the garden. She smiled, a smile that started small, almost shy, and slowly blossomed like a flower in the sun. Nathan returned it, unhurried. A soft breeze rustled the leaves, creating shifting patches of light and shadow on the grass. The world carried on, serene in its everyday beauty. And in the midst of it all, Nathan Cross realized, with awe and gratitude, that this was precisely where he wanted to be. Belonging. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like, because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.